This tutorial is to show you how to do some basic Photoshop editing. So I'm gonna walk you through some settings in Photoshop, and hopefully by watching this step by step, it'll help you uh, to do some very basic editing in Photoshop. And I'm just going to cover a few things, such as color space, levels, contrast, brightness, hue, saturation, brightness, unsharp masking, and maybe a little bit touching up here and there. But these are very basic edits, and hopefully this will get or help you get started in Photoshop. So let's get started. So I have 3 sample images here, and I have them in a folder. So you can load these up however you want. I like to simply open up a few images at a time, a small batch, 3 images, 5 images, something like that. Well, as long as you have the real estate. So if you can see how big this screen is, I have a 27-inch iMac, which are great for Photoshop editing. So because I have a large screen, I can open up quite a number of them and switch between the tabs and stuff. Anyways, I'm gonna go ahead and open these. So you could do the hard thing by going to Photoshop and File and Open. I mean, not that hard. I mean, the long way. That's what I meant to say. But instead, I like to just go to that folder and then drag these 3 right into the Photoshop icon, and they quickly open up. As you can see, here are 3 images. So let's look at this one here first. The first thing I look for in a photo is the color space. So different color spaces are RGB, CMYK, sRGB. Well, just a quick background. RGB is what your monitor is showing you. That's what your screen. That's what you can see from a computer screen. That's green, red, blue. Red, green, blue. Sorry. CMYK. That's cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. K is black. Those are 4 color processes that are used for print. So if you ever decide to publish something like a magazine, those things are printed using 4 color print process. So these images would have to be converted to CMYK. But a lot of this conversion is typically done by these post-production houses that actually do the printing. So you don't have to worry about that. Now, the third one is sRGB, and that's specific to digital photography, scanning, and most importantly, printing. And by printing, I mean photo printing. Like when you go to your local Walmart, Costco, or mini photo lab to actually make prints of your photos. That's the color space your photo needs to be in. That's sRGB. So, first thing I do is go to Photoshop and go into the Edit menu and go down to where it says Convert to Profile. I open this up and it's telling me that it's the profile assigned to this image is Adobe RGB by Nikon, because that's where the image came from, a Nikon camera. And it asks me what the destination I want to convert it to. And yes, I want to convert it to sRGB. Ignore the IEC number and all that. Just look at sRGB. See, there's CMYK and there's a bunch of other ones, so you basically just want to keep it to sRGB. It was already set there, so I leave the settings as is and I say OK. So now it's converted. Sometimes when you convert it, you'll see a slight color shift, but in this case, no color is really shifted, so we're good to go. Second thing I do is open up the levels. So you can do that by going to Image, Adjustment, and Levels, and you get this little window. This window is showing you the histogram. The histogram is very, very important. So most modern digital digital SLR cameras have this histogram, and it tells you a lot of information. So the numbers go from 0 to 55, and it's set to RGB. So I don't change anything here except I leave the preview checked on, and I take a look at the Instagram. So notice that it's shifted towards the left. That means that the image is full of color. As you can see, these peaks here in the mid-tone range and towards darkness. That means there's full of detail, full of color detail, and it's shifted towards the left because see, there's a little gap here, right to the right. So it's shifted towards the left. So what does that mean? Well, that means that your photo was slightly underexposed according to the specifications of the camera or the way Photoshop reads the exposure. And that's perfectly fine. If it's underexposed, no big deal. This is what the histogram is for. I mean, the levels adjustment. So one thing you could do is you could take the high end of the levels here, where these down here, this is where the whites register. So you can bring in this and tighten up the curve a little. So as I drag it, you'll see that the image is getting lighter and lighter and lighter. See that? Okay, if you didn't see that, I made some changes by dragging that, and you could click on preview to toggle it off. See, that's before, that's the image as it was when you opened it. And now if I toggle it on to see my changes that I just applied, it's brighter. So this is how you adjust, the levels. So the image is bumped up all the way towards the black, so there's no need to drag in some black. If I did, it'd just get darker and darker. See that? And you lose the detail in the hair and the shadows. But we don't want that, so we're going to leave it the way it is. So you bring in the highlight here. Now you look at the midtones. And the midtones are at 1.00. This is where you can adjust it slightly. You don't want to go crazy with this. If you adjust it slightly towards the left, notice the midtones of the entire image get lighter. And that's great. If you want a bright, vivid photo to print, or something vivid like this, saturated, perfect. This is how you do it. Or should I say the beginning steps of how you do it. If you don't, then leave it where it was. It was at 0. Or you can darken it by keep going to the right, It's darker and darker. Or what I like to do is I keep it at 1.00. And sometimes I'll drag it to the left slightly, but I will not go past like 109 or 1.10. That's as far as I go. See, the more that you go, it gets lighter, 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 lighter. And now the skin tones look washed out. The colors look washed out. Keep going, and it's just ugliness. It's like an overexposed photo. Well, like I said, I keep it at 1.09 or so. So let's just do that. Once again, I'll toggle it off so you can see this is how I opened the photo. This is what it looks like. This is straight from the camera. But now I'm going to toggle on my changes that I made here when I dragged it. First I dragged in the right slider, then the middle, a slight adjustment. So I'm going to toggle it back on so you can see the changes. And there are my changes. Okay, so levels are done, hit OK, and they are applied. And as you can see in my history window, it's showing me the history of every step I did so far. So I opened the image, converted the profile, and then levels. Next thing I want to do is look at saturation. So I'm going to open up saturation, and this is color saturation. So you can go to the image and adjustments, and you can go to hue saturation. So this is where you can make the colors pop. Sometimes your digital camera might tend to give you an average color saturation, and that's fine. That's what you want, actually. You don't want to do these changes in the camera, because you'll get screwed later when you want to capture something neutral. So you want the camera to have these neutral settings for hue saturation. Just go with the default settings straight out of the manufacturer from Canon or Nikon. Don't change those. Leave it the way it is. So here I'm just going to bump up the saturation. I'm going to leave the hue. Don't touch the hue, and don't touch the lightness. I'm just going to, in this case, I'm going to just bump up the saturation slightly. So I'm going to drag my slider to the right. You see the +2, +3, +8. So I'm going to go to like +17. Notice that the colors on her skin tone became more vivid, as did her dress and the midtones, and everything became more vivid. It starts to pop a little more. But maybe this is a little too much, or maybe not. Well, what you could do is just toggle off the preview, and you can see that's before. Toggle it back on. This is after. Maybe it's too much, so I'll pull it back a little. Instead of 17, I'll go back to like maybe 10. Maybe 10's a good saturation. This is all subjective. These will not be the exact numbers you'll use for your image. It's all subjective, so you're gonna have to slide slowly and carefully on your image to see what it looks like and look at the changes. So don't go by these numbers. These are just, a guideline to show you what I'm doing. So if I toggle it off, see, okay, there's original image. Toggle it back on. Okay, I like the saturation. Maybe a little bit less. Maybe like a 9. There we go. I like that, so I'm going to say okay. So now the next thing I'm going to do is color balance. So I'm going to go ahead and open the color balance, and I'm going to go to Image, Adjustment, Color Balance. Oops. There we go. And this is now where I'm going to take a look and see what I'm going to adjust here. I don't care about the cat, nor the furniture, nor the dress. I care about the skin tones. When it comes to people, it's the skin tones. Do they look neutral to me? They look pretty good. But if she was a little too yellow, which tends to happen with digital photography, you want to make sure that you're looking at midtones checked on and preserved luminosities checked on. And then you're going to look at, if you think it's too yellow, you're going to look at the yellow-blue slider. If it's too yellow, you're going to slide it over to blue just a little. +2 in the blue, +5 maybe or so. So adding blue takes away the yellow in your photos. And the same goes for adding green, takes away the magenta, and adding cyan takes away the red. So here I'm just going to do a quick test and uncheck it, the preview. And okay, so check it back on, check it off, check it back on. Okay, very subtle difference. But here, if I go a little bit more and then toggle it back on, you see there's a big change. So I added 19 points of blue, and it changes the image. It made everything bluer. And you can see if I turn off a toggle, it's back to the way it was. So I'm just going to lessen this. Maybe just keep it like 8 or so. So here it is without it, and here it is with it, and I can see that it did change this to my liking. Mind you, I only care about the face right now. I'm not color correcting for a specific color product, specific color, nothing. No, I'm simply correcting for face, for skin tones. So if I'm happy with the color balance, I'm going to click OK. And next I'm going to look at contrast and brightness. So if you go back to the original, remember I was talking about levels. It does brighten the image to a certain point, but here you can add more brightness to the image if needs be, and you can do so quite nicely. If you go to Image, Adjustment, Brightness, Contrast, and then you will see these sliders. You just do not use Legacy. Don't check this. You can if you want, but I would not. The new brightness contrast is much better. So just use the current. Just check on the preview, and then slowly drag the brightness over. You'll see the whole image starts to get brighter. Okay, see, that's a little too much. See, the face is starting to get yellowish and washed out and overexposed. So obviously I'm going to tone it back, and let's say 11 is a good number. So added 11 points. If I toggle the preview, if I uncheck it, you will see the differences. There it is before, and there it is after. And as you can see, there is a brighter look to the whole image. And I'm going to add a little contrast. But you got to be careful. You add too much contrast, you might lose the detail in her hair and the darkness and the shadows. So I'm just going to add a little bit to tighten up the image just a little bit. So I'm going to say, okay, 3, 4 points, 5 points. Okay, so now if I toggle the preview off, there it is. And maybe this is before, so maybe before it looks a little flat. Adding brightness and contrast makes the image pop just a little bit. So when you do these brightness adjustments, make sure that you pay attention to things like these hot spots in her hand here, her lips. Well, I don't care about the lip part here, but right here and on her cheekbone and her forehead, there's these slight hot spots. And maybe the way the image was initially was perfectly fine, but I'm just doing these exaggerated adjustments just so you can see and practice these step by step, so you know what to look for. So assuming that the image is perfectly fine to my liking the way it is, if I like it, everything's fine, then I go ahead and click OK. So that gets applied. So you can see my history here. I opened it, profile, level, saturation, color balance, brightness, contrast. It keeps track of running order of every step you make. So now I'm going to assess the image and look for any imperfections. If I look at the bottom of the screen, it tells you the image size and the percentage. So I'm looking at this image at 25%. You always want to look at the images in factors of 25. So what I mean is, when you do your adjustments, look at the image at 25%, 50%, 75%, or 100%, or 200. Don't do 33, don't do 66, or do the even, don't do the odd number, do the 25, 50, or, and the reason, it has something to do with the pixels. I can't explain it. There's a technical article I read on that before that says that if you're editing and you're looking at your image at 33% or 66%, the pixels are different, slightly different shape, and they're not showing you the true, full quality of the image. So you always want to make sure, like I said, down here it's 25% or 50 or 100. So I'm going to zoom in, and you can do this by clicking with the magnifying tool. Here, this is the zoom tool. So if you click on that, you click on the image, see down at 33. You don't want to edit at 33. I'm looking down here at the corner at this number, so this shows you. So remember I said 50, so 50 is good. And if I actually want to see this image at 100%, I'm not going to click on the zoom tool anymore. I'm just gonna do the shortcut on the Mac is the command key and the plus minus. So I'm going to command plus. That's 66, and then now I'm at 100%. This is 100%. This is the full resolution from your digital camera. So I'm going to go ahead and show you some quick edits here to take away some of these blemishes. I mean, I'm actually going to pretend that they're not beauty marks and they're actually blemishes that I want to remove. And of course, because I played with the color, you can see that there's yellowing around the lips. See, this is why you want to edit your photos at 100%. So as you're doing your color adjustments, you want to make sure you're looking at this. So there's some things you want to take out, some things you don't. This is all subjective. This is all up to you. So here I want to take out some of these blemishes. Photoshop CC 2014. This is the latest version of Photoshop, by the way. So if you're using this, you can go over here to your tools on the left side, click on the Band-Aid tool, and it's called the Spot Healing Brush. So if you click on that, notice the little circle I have now here next to your mouth. So this is your brush size. To make this brush size smaller or bigger, click on the bracket keys. The left bracket makes it smaller, the right bracket makes it bigger. This is on your keyboard. And these brackets are just above the return key and to the left. Just above the return key to the left. These are left and right brackets, and they control the brush sizes. So anytime you're using a brush in Photoshop to edit, to paint, to do whatever, you can make your brush smaller and bigger. So here I'm going to make this brush the size of this tiny little, I'm just going to call this a blemish, just for the sake of this editing tutorial. So I'm going to make it a little bit bigger, like right there, and then I'm just going to click with the mouse. There, gone. See? Simple as that. Now I'm going to go to the nose, and then make it a little bit bigger, and then I click, gone. So this spot healing brush is very intuitive. It's very intelligent in the sense that it senses all the color and pattern and information on whatever you're clicking on, and it grabs that information and it blends it so you can pull out that blemish very easily. The old way would be using the clone tool, and it's very hit and miss because you have to clone it to an area very close to it so you can sample it. So otherwise, for example, if I was trying to match this part of her cheek right here to the nose, it's never going to match because notice how red and pink it is, and the nose is not red and pink. So that's why the spot healing brush works wonders. And I can just go down here and do a couple more. I can go here, click there, gone. I can go here, click, gone. Here, click, gone. See? Wonderful tool. I'm going to click here, gone. Wonderful tool to edit blemishes, little tiny like imperfections. It's not always perfect. You can always undo. You can Command Z on the keyboard on a Mac, or go to Edit, Undo. So that's it for spot healing brush. So let's say I took care of all my imperfections, and now I'm ready to move on. So I'm just gonna zoom out a little, back to 50%. So now I'm pretty much done. I did everything I wanted to do. I converted the profile, I adjusted the levels, adjusted the hue saturation, the color balance, the brightness contrast, and I did a few spot healing brushes here to pick up some blemishes that I wanted to take out. And if I'm totally satisfied now, I can go ahead and save this image. But before I save, if I'm going to keep this as a high-res image and print this high-res, so let's say this is a picture that I'm going to make 16 by 20, even bigger, maybe 20 by 30 print that I'm going to print. The last step of the editing that I do is I go to filter, and I'm going to add some sharpness. The wrong way to go about this is to do sharpness and sharpen. You don't want to sharpen. You want to unsharp mask. So I'm going to click on unsharp mask. So my recipe for unsharp mask is pretty simple. The amount, I always keep it at 150%. The threshold at 0. The only thing I change, this is very subjective, is the radius of the pixels. So that's the distance of the pixels and how much of that I'm going to sharpen. It's like sharpening the edges, if you can imagine. You're going to see it in a second. So at 50%, it's hard to tell, but I'm going to zoom into 100%. And I'm going to scroll. And as you can see, right now it's showing me a preview of what unsharp mask is doing. If I unclick it, the preview, you will see a subtle softness come back. This is before. This is what it looks like before. If I click preview on, what I want you to look at is look at the eyelashes here for a second. Pay attention to the eyelashes as I click this on. Okay, here we go. Ready? Oh, see that? These became sharper. The skin became sharper. The hair became sharper. There's a big difference now. So you're bringing back the sharpness that you lose in JPEG compression. JPEG is a compression file format. So as soon as you snap the photo with your digital camera and save it on your camera, that image saved as a JPEG is compressed. So instead of being a 50 megabyte file, it's a 2 megabyte file. So it softens the image. It does a bunch of things to the color and contrast and all that, So I'm pretty happy, going back here to unsharp masking, I'm pretty happy with the way it looks. Now that I have the preview on, I'm going to shift these pixels over. Like I said, don't touch the amount, don't touch the threshold. I'm going to shift the pixels over just so you can see what happens. So I'm shifting it over to 1 pixel. look at the big difference. Look at how everything's sharper, and look at how all these pores on her face and hair and everything became grainy sharp. This is bad. This is what you don't want. This is a mistake in sharpening. That's why, like I said, well, just to show you, I'm gonna uncheck the preview so you can see what it looks like before. So see, you went from that to this. This is bad. You don't want that. So my radius, I slide it back all the way to 0.1, and I usually go 0.2, 0.3, 0.4. Usually I never go beyond 0.4 usually, because what you're looking for is sharpness in the details, like the hair, the eyelashes, the highlights on her lips, you know. Everything else you don't care about, because the important thing about a person is the eyes. So in this case, once again, I'm going to uncheck the preview so you can see the before. That's the before. Adding sharpness by unsharp masking with just a little bit. Then I'm going to check it back on, and it's just a beautiful, you know, sharpness that comes back in the details. Now, if I, you know, zoom out to 50%, and if I turn off unsharp masking, the preview, you know, you may or may not be able to see the difference. So this is before, and if I click it back on, this is after. It's very difficult to see the changes. That's why you want to, you know, zoom into a particular spot that you want to see the changes at 100%, and then toggle it on or off, and make your radius adjustments here, you know, so you can see the differences. So that's it for that. Now I'm gonna go ahead and say yes, okay. Unsharp masking is done. So everything I wanted to do to this image, from step 1 to step whatever this is, 10, whatever, I've done. This is ready to go, to move on, to be saved. So I zoom out typically 25% so I can view most of the image on my screen, or full size. I look at everything. And then what I can do is I can go to my history here real quick and toggle before and after for the whole list of changes. So if I go to the top here where it says image 4, and the very top one, if I click on that, this is showing me before. This is the way it came off the camera. It's a good image, it's good exposure, but like I said, I applied some changes and I sharpened it and all that, and I brightness and saturation and all that. So if I go here and then come back the history to the bottom to the last thing I did, which is unsharp mask, I turn them all back on, and you can see all the changes I made: saturation, the brightness, the contrast, everything. So this one's ready to go. So I'm going to go ahead and save this now. So you can save it however you want. However, if you choose to save this as a, whoops, I did not want to do that. I don't know what it did. Okay, I misclicked here. So, okay, I didn't want this. Okay. Excuse me. So I made a mistake, and I just accidentally slipped with the mouse and just clicked something and ignored what I just did. Now, what I was saying is, if you choose to save this as a JPEG only, remember that this should be the last time you open this image, because every time you open a JPEG and save it, and open it, save it, open it, save it as a JPEG, it gets compressed, then recompressed, then recompressed, then recompressed. So you don't want to be recompressing JPEGs. And then what happens is you start losing the nice detail and beautiful skin tones and the fur of the cat and all these beautiful things that a high resolution digital camera captured becomes gritty and muddy and softer over time. So you don't want to do that. If you feel like you can open this again, what I would do is go to File, go to Save As, not Save, Save As. I'm going to go to Save As. And then from Save As, I'm going to open up, I have the 3 images here. And I want you to look at the bottom of this window. And the bottom of this window is showing me something important. It's embedding the color profile. Remember, we converted it to sRGB? That's exactly what you want. So yes, embed the profile. That should always be checked on. Save it as JPEG. Okay, well, like I said, instead of JPEG, we're going to do 2 things. I'm going to create a new folder right here. And I'm going to call this folder PSD for Photoshop document. Now, now that I'm in this folder, I'm going to change this JPEG format to Photoshop. Just Photoshop. And notice that the file name is now called PSD for Photoshop, and it has the appropriate sRGB color space. That's all. This is all that I want. Perfect, ready to go. And I'm going to click save, and it's saving. So done. So the reason for this is Photoshop does not compress, does not change, does not degrade the image with compressing and recompressing as JPEG would do. It just saves this entire photo with the changes I just did as a preserved photo. So if I open up the PSD, make changes, open it, change it, save it, open it, save it, open it, save it as PSD, I'm not going to get the artifacts of JPEG, which is the softening and the grittiness or pixels and all that. So now let's pretend that this Photoshop document PSD image is ready to go either online, like a Facebook, or you're gonna print this at your mini lab. Well, you got to make sure of a couple things. If somebody orders an 8x10 photo, or 8x12 photo, or 11x14, you're gonna want to crop this to those sizes, and I will discuss that later. But for now, since the camera pretty much gives you an image that's the ratio 4:6 print, you're gonna just keep this the way it is. Don't crop it, don't change it for now. I'll probably do another tutorial on cropping, and it'll be a short one, but for now we're not going to discuss this. So like I said, we saved the PSD, so we're going to save this again. I'm going to go to File, I'm going to say Save As. It's going to open up this window. Now I'm going to go to this PSD folder, go back one, and here I'm going to click on a new folder, and I'm going to call this folder JPEGs retouched. I'm going to say create, and now I have two folders here. I'm inside of the JPEGs retouched folder. I got to click here, very important, I got to click here to change this to JPEG. Not JPEG Stereo or 2000, don't use those, just JPEG. Okay, now that I'm saving this as JPEG, notice I get the appropriate file extension, JPG. The color space is once again there. It's the correct color space. And now I just have to save this. So if I click save, I will get another window. This is my JPEG options. So always choose the maximum file size. Just slider should be all the way to the right. It should say maximum. It should say quality 12 or whatever it is. And always choose baseline standard. So look at this carefully for a second. Make sure that these options are all as they should be. Should be always be the largest, all the way to the far right. Don't make your files smaller by choosing small file. Don't do that, because it just compresses the JPEG more and more, takes away color information, sharpness, and all that to make the file smaller. You don't want that. If you need to make your picture smaller, go resize it, and I'll show you how to do that in another tutorial. But for now, make sure the quality is the highest, baseline standard, and previews checked on, and then just say OK. So that's it. Image is saved. So, okay, let's go ahead and move on. I'm gonna get rid of this image here for a second and just switch over to another one. So here's another image of a bride, and I'm going to edit this one really quickly because I just showed you what I just did. So I'm going to go ahead and walk through the steps. So like I said, first thing I do is go to Edit, Convert to Profile. I notice it's a Nikon sRGB, and that's fine, but I'm just going to convert it to working RGB. using the Adobe image. So I'm going to say OK. And you notice that the colors didn't really shift. They're still the same. That's a good sign. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open up the levels, and notice that my histogram now, I have a little space here for the darks, and then the histogram exposure goes all the way to the far right to the highlights. So this is telling me that there's a lot of information in the mid-tone range here, and some in the darkness. As you can see, the background's dark, the hair is dark, and there's a lot of shadow detail, in the background. And this over here towards the right side of the histogram is the highlight detail, which would be her light skin tones and the color white in her veil. So there's not much to change here. For this image, I'm not going to slide this, because if I slide this over like I did the last one, see, the image gets brighter, but I don't want that because it's washing out her arms. It's creating that overexposed look. So that histogram pretty much goes all the way to the end, so I'm not going to slide that. I might slide just the middle one for this case. The middle one might just go just a little bit over, just to brighten it just a little to like 1.19, 1.110. Remember I said don't go past 1.10 or 109, just that range, So I'm going to and I could toggle it, preview, see, that's before, here's after, brighten it up just a little. Okay, so now I'm going to do saturation, and for saturation I'm just going to bump up the color just a little to bring back some color into her skin. Maybe it's like number +7. I'm going to toggle it off. That's off. Here it is on. And it just brought back a little color. Okay, I'm happy with that. I'm going to go into color balancing. Now the it looks okay. I could see a tinge of yellow, and if I zoom in a little, I could see a tinge of yellow here or there, but it doesn't bother me because it's just a slight tinge, So I'm not really going to change the color balance here. I'll probably just go ahead and slide the blue over a couple notches, but that's about it. Take away some of the yellow. I could toggle on and off, and that's off, and that's on. Probably can't even see the difference. That's okay. I'm going to say okay. So now I'm going to go back and adjust some brightness contrast. So here, if I like this look, this look here is very reminiscent of like something you would see in a magazine. So I don't want this too bright, So I might just play with the brightness a little, slide it over a little. Maybe, see, that's too much. I mean, that's fine, but it starts to wash out and overexpose her arm and her face. So I don't want 45. That's too much. Maybe dial it back to the 30s and 20s, or so. And add a little bit of contrast, like just a few points, Now, if I toggle this preview off, you can see that's before, here's after. I like it, it's brighter, but there's a little bit overexposure here, So I'm going to tone down the brightness just a little bit more. So I'm going to come back into the teens maybe, and then toggle off as before, toggle on. Okay, it's bright. Maybe it's a little too bright, bring it down a little bit more. This is all subjective. This is all to your liking. How do you want it to look? This is all up to you. So let's say this is the final look I like in terms of brightness. Now I'm going to go with it. So I'm just going to say okay, apply it, and move on. Next thing. Now, do I want to clean up any blemishes, any spots, anything I see wrong? Well, in this case I don't, because this is probably the bride, But like I said, I can come in here with the Band-Aid tool, which is the spot healing brush, and then I can just move it over. And remember, hit the brackets. The left bracket or right bracket increases, the brush size. You don't want a brush this big for a little spot that small, or this small here. You want a brush that's just a little bit bigger than the spot. So something like that. And if I click, see, blemish is gone. Now if I go to this side one here and click, blemish is gone. If I go here, blemish is gone. See, so I'm cleaning. This is a nice way to clean up blemishes. Now there's one here, looks like a mosquito bite or something. So this is a bigger one. So I'm going to choose a bigger brush, but take note that the entire cheek area is red because of makeup. So this may or may not work, but we're about to find out. So I'm going to go ahead and click. Hey, check it out. Well, yeah, for the most part it worked. It doesn't always do a perfect job, but you can see there's trace remnants of smoothness, where there were pores. But maybe that's okay. And to be a fair judge for something like this, what you do is look away for a second, and as you're looking away, come back and look at that same spot you just edited and ask yourself, if somebody was to just look at this image, not looking at this spot here, but just the image, can they tell what you did? If they can't tell what you did, if they cannot tell how you edit that, then that's a great edit. That's a good adjustment you made. But if they start to see that you started to fix things and now our skin's splotchier than it was before, then that's not good. The thing is to be subtle and and not see the difference. So I'm going to go back here and edit this last one. So I'm going to make my brush smaller to fit that one. And I'm going to click, gone. See? And if you look away and look back at the image, you can't even tell that you fixed that. So let's say I'm happy with this, I'm done. So now I'm going to zoom back out. And remember, we're not changing the size of this. So the last thing I'm going to do is add unsharp mask. So I'm going to go to filter, sharpen, unsharp mask. So remember, 150%, threshold at 0. The only thing you're adjusting is the radius of the pixels. So I'm looking at this at 25%. I'm going to go into 50% for this image. And right now the radius is at 0.3 pixels. I'm going to toggle this off. So that's without unsharp masking. Now I'm going to toggle it back on. Off, on, off, on. I can't really tell, so I'm going to zoom into 100%. Now that I'm 100%, I'm going to look at details such as her eyelashes. And here we go. I'm going to look at her eyelashes. I'm going to turn this off. So now I'm going to pay attention to these little tiny strands of eyelashes. As I turn it back on, I'm going to pay attention to what they look like. So right now it's off, and here we go on. So see, the sharpness came back for this fine detail, and that's what you want, because it sharpens out the subtleties of her hair and this pattern here and this netting and the little tiny things that are in focus. Those are the kind of things that come back, like this hair here. Not so much the necklace, not so much this hair that's in the background out of focus. It's only the things that are in focus. And that's a great thing, because now you can zoom back out to 50%, 25%, and the image is overall sharper without making anything look like it was just a big artifact or fake. So I was happy with 0.3 pixels. Remember, 0.4, 0.5, maybe you slide it over, you take a look and determine what's too much, But for this, I'm happy the way it is. And once again, you unsharp mask at the full resolution. So let's say I unsharp mask this here, but I'm gonna make a smaller version of this one, because after all, this is probably a 30 megabyte file. This is not something you would upload to Facebook. This is too big. So that would be you resizing this image to a smaller size. Let's say you make it like 8 inches wide at 200 dpi. Once you make those corrections of size, then you apply the unsharp mask. Unsharp mask is the last thing that you do before you save it. Just keep that in mind. And I'll probably do a tutorial on that, resizing and cropping. But for now, I'm just showing you the basics. So I'm happy with this. I'm going to click OK. So now I get to save it. So once again, I'm going to save as. And I'm going to double click on my PSD folder and make sure that I change JPEG to Photoshop. My profile is there. I'm going to go ahead and save it. Now I'm going to go back and save a different version as a JPEG. And now I'm going to click on the folder, go back one step, and go into the JPEGs retouched folder. The file name's already there, but it says PSD. So all you have to do is click on this, change it to JPEG, and it changes automatically up here. So you're good. Profile's there. Save it as JPEG. Next window pops up. Remember, preview on. You want maximum, large file, and baseline standard. Click OK. And you're done with this one. So that's pretty much it for editing. These are basic edits for people. And this is for portraiture, for weddings, you know, headshots, people, just in general. You know, of course, if you were doing something very specific that, like, let's say it was a model and had to be something that's going to go in a magazine, and you wanted something touched up, there's a lot of things you could do to this image. You know, for example, you could just zoom in and you could see, well, okay, in this case, there's strands of hair here that fell out of place. You can fix these back hairs here. You know, there's so much you can do. You can enhance the eye color. These are all things that you will not spend your time on if you're editing wedding photos or people photos for the average, you know, person. You would do that if, for example, a client was paying you for this one and only image that's going to end up on some magazine or some billboard, and they needed perfection with the hair and shadows and earrings and all that. This is where you would spend all that time, and I'm talking hours and days editing. But you're not going to do that for wedding photos, headshots. This is the stuff I just showed you that is the basics of editing that will get you through editing the majority of your photos, especially if you're editing wedding photos and you're editing 1,000 of them for the client. This is what you would be doing right here. So I hope you learned something. I hope you enjoy this tutorial. It's very basic. Of course, there's no right or wrong way to use Photoshop. What I showed you is the way I do things. It's my recipe. It's, you know, somebody else could do it very differently. Somebody else could start off with the healing brush and then color and then go backwards in levels. I mean, there's no right or wrong way. The only thing that matters ultimately is the final product. What does the final image look like? So with that being said, I want to thank you for watching, and I hope you learned something new. And if you enjoy this, go ahead and comment below and share your thoughts and ideas. And if you want to see something else Photoshop wise, another tutorial, go ahead and comment and let me know what you'd like to see. I hope this helped you. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you soon.